The phone wasn't hers. It rang once, twice, then a third time, and somehow, every ring felt louder than the last. Nia Carter stared at it in her hand, her fingers slightly trembling. Because the man who dropped it didn't look like someone who made mistakes. He wasn't just well-dressed. He was precise. Every step he took earlier had been controlled, every movement calculated, even the way he sat, still, silent, watching everything without being noticed. People like that didn't lose things. People like that didn't forget. And yet, here it was, his phone, still ringing. Nia swallowed. Just answer it and tell them, she whispered to herself. Simple. That's all she had to do. She lifted it to her ear. Hello? Silence. For a second, there was nothing. No breathing, no background noise. Just silence. Then, a voice. Low. Cold. Sharp. Is the boss with you? Nia frowned. I think you... The voice cut her off. Don't waste time. Her grip tightened. I don't know what you're talking about. Another pause. Then the voice came back, slower this time. Then listen carefully. Something in her chest tightened. Tell him. They made a mistake. Nia's heartbeat started rising. What mistake? Who is this? But the call ended. Just like that. No goodbye. No explanation. Just silence again. And suddenly, the air around her felt different. Heavier. Dangerous. Slowly. She turned her head. And that's when she saw him, standing at the entrance, watching her, not surprised, not confused, just watching, like he already knew. And in that moment, Nia realized something terrifying. She didn't just pick up the wrong phone. She stepped into something she wasn't supposed to touch. And Nia Carter's life had never been easy, not once, not even for a moment. She grew up in a small apartment where the walls were so thin you could hear your neighbors arguing at night, where bills were always late, where dreams felt like luxury items no one could afford. Her mother worked 2 jobs until her health gave out. Her younger brother looked up to her like she had all the answers. But the truth? Nia was just figuring things out one day at a time. She didn't have a safety net. She didn't have connections. She didn't have luck. All she had was resilience. Every morning she woke up before sunrise. Not because she wanted to, but because she had to. Her alarm would buzz at 5:30 a.m., and for a few seconds, she would just lie there, staring at the ceiling, thinking, calculating. Rent, groceries, hospital bills, transport. Every number running through her head like a constant storm. Then she would get up. No complaints, no drama, just move. Because stopping meant falling behind. And falling behind meant losing everything. Her job at the luxury restaurant wasn't glamorous. People thought it was. From the outside, it looked like success. Fancy uniforms, rich customers, expensive interiors. But inside, it was a battlefield. Customers who treated her like she didn't exist. Managers who only cared about money. Co-workers who smiled in front of her and whispered behind her back. Still, Nia never let it break her. Because she had something most people there didn't. Self-respect. Even when someone snapped their fingers at her, she didn't lose her calm. Even when someone insulted her, she didn't lose her dignity. Even when life pushed her down, she stood back up. Again, and again, and again. Until that night. The night everything changed. It started like any other shift. Busy, loud, chaotic. The restaurant was packed. Luxury cars lined outside. Inside, the atmosphere was filled with expensive perfume, quiet deals, and fake smiles. Nia tied her apron tighter and stepped onto the floor. Table 9 is yours tonight, her manager said without even looking at her. VIP guest, don't mess it up. She nodded. Got it. She grabbed her notepad and walked toward the table. And that's when she saw him for the first time. He was sitting alone. Black suit, no tie. Minimal movement. But there was something about him, something that didn't match the rest of the room. While everyone else tried to look important, he didn't try at all. And somehow, That made him the most important person there. Nia approached carefully. "Good evening, sir. May I take your order?" He looked up, and for a brief moment, their eyes met. Something passed between them. Not attraction, not curiosity, something else. Something deeper. Like he was assessing her. "I'll have black coffee," he said. "That's all." Nia blinked. "Just coffee? In a place like this?" Still, she nodded. "I'll bring it right away." She turned and walked back toward the counter. But halfway there, "Hey!" The voice cut through the room like a knife. Nia froze. She didn't need to turn around to know who it was. There was always one. Every night, someone drunk, someone loud, someone who needed attention. She turned slowly. A man at table 5 was staring at her, annoyed, impatient. "Why are you ignoring us?" "I'll be right with you, sir," she said calmly. But the man smirked. "No, you'll come here now." The table laughed. Nia took a breath. "Stay calm. Stay professional." She walked over. "Yes, sir?" The man leaned back. "Repeat my order." "You haven't placed one yet, sir." The laughter got louder. The man's face changed. "You calling me a liar?" "No, sir, I just—" "Then say the order." Silence. Nia stood there, trapped, everyone watching. Her manager? Nowhere. Of course. He never stepped in. Her voice dropped. "Sir, I'm here to help you. If you tell me your order—" The man slammed his glass on the table. "I said repeat it!" The room felt smaller, tighter. Nia's chest tightened. Not again. Not tonight. Not in front of everyone. But before she could say anything, a sound cut through the tension. Crash. Glass shattered. Everyone turned. The coffee cup from table 9 lay broken on the floor. And the man in black? It was no longer sitting. He stood there, still, silent. But everything had changed. The air, the noise, the energy. It all shifted. The drunk man scoffed. "What? You got a problem?" The man in black didn't answer immediately. He just looked at him, calm, cold. Then finally, "No," he said. "I don't like noise." That was it. No shouting, no threats, just a simple sentence. But somehow, it hit harder than anything else. The drunk man laughed. "Then leave." The man in black took a step forward, and something inside Nia tightened, because now she could feel it. Something dangerous was about to happen. "Sir, please," she tried to step in, but the man in black raised his hand slightly, and she stopped. Not because she wanted to, but because something about that gesture commanded obedience. The drunk man stood up. "You think you're tough?" No response, just silence. And then, the phone rang. The same phone, the one that would change everything. The man in black glanced at it, ignored it. And in that exact moment, the drunk man shoved him. Gasps filled the room. Nia stepped forward instinctively. "Stop!" But the man didn't move, not even an inch. It was like pushing a wall. Slowly, he looked down at the hand that touched him, then back at the man. And then, he smiled. Not friendly, not amused, but final. Like a decision had been made. Minutes later, the situation was contained. The drunk man was removed. The restaurant tried to breathe again, but nothing felt normal anymore, because Nia couldn't stop thinking about him. The way he moved, the way he spoke, the way people reacted without understanding why. She brought his coffee again, her hands slightly shaky. "I'm sorry for what happened, sir." "It wasn't your fault," he replied. Simple, direct, different. He stood up, left money on the table, and walked toward the exit. No goodbye, no glance back, just gone. And then, it happened. Something slipped from his coat. A phone. Nia noticed immediately. "Sir, you forgot your—" But the door closed. He was gone. She looked down at the phone in her hand, and right on cue, it rang, again. Her heart started racing. This time, it felt different, heavier, like whatever was on the other side of that call was about to change her life forever. She hesitated, just for a second. Then, she answered, "Hello?" And the voice said, "Is the boss with you?" Nia froze. Because now she knew this wasn't just a mistake. This was something much bigger. And somewhere outside, the man in the black suit had already turned back, walking toward her. "Is the boss with you?" The words didn't just echo in Nia's ears. They settled in her chest, heavy, uncomfortable, dangerous. I think you have the wrong number," she said carefully, her voice barely steady. "No," the voice replied instantly, cold, certain. "You have the right phone." Nia's fingers tightened. Her eyes moved slowly toward the glass doors of the restaurant. And that's when she saw him. He hadn't left. He was standing outside, watching, not rushing, not confused, just waiting, as if he already knew exactly what was happening. "Put him on," the voice demanded. Nia swallowed. "He's not here." Silence, then listen carefully. Her heartbeat started climbing, fast, too fast. To tell him the shipment was intercepted. Nia's breath caught. And someone talked. Her mind went blank. "What shipment? I don't—" The call ended. No explanation, no warning. Just gone. Nia slowly lowered the phone. Her hands were shaking now. Not slightly, noticeably. And when she looked up, he was already inside, walking toward her. Each step he took felt deliberate, measured, controlled. Like he wasn't walking toward her. He was closing distance. And somehow, that felt more dangerous. The noise of the restaurant faded. People were still talking, eating, laughing. But for Nia, everything was quiet, because all she could hear was her own heartbeat. He stopped in front of her. Close. Too close. "You answered it." Not a question. A statement. Nia forced herself to speak. "I was just trying to return your phone." "What did they say?" His tone didn't rise, didn't change, but it carried weight, the kind of weight that made lying feel impossible. "They said the shipment was intercepted." A pause. "And that someone talked." For a brief second, something shifted in his expression. So small, most people wouldn't notice. But Nia did, because she was looking directly at him. And what she saw wasn't anger. It was calculation. Cold, precise calculation. "Anything else?" he asked. "They asked if the boss was with me." Silence, a long one. Then he exhaled slowly, almost like he expected it. "And what did you say?" "I said you weren't here." Another pause, then he nodded once. "Good." That one word released a tension Nia didn't even realize she was holding, but it didn't answer her question. "Hey, who are you?" she asked. And for the first time, he didn't respond immediately. He studied her, carefully, like he was deciding something, not about himself, about her. "My name is Kang Min-jae." The name meant nothing to her, not yet, but it would, very soon, because names like his didn't stay unknown for long, before Nia could say anything else. A man in a suit rushed inside, then another, then two more. All of them moved with purpose. No hesitation, no confusion. They stopped near Kang Min-jae and bowed their heads slightly, not dramatically, not theatrically, but respectfully. "Sir," one of them said quietly. Nia noticed something immediately. They didn't look at her, not once, like she wasn't even part of the equation. "The situation?" Min-jae asked. "Contained," the man replied, "but we need to move." Min-jae nodded slightly. And then his eyes returned to Nia. And in that moment, she realized something. These men, they weren't security. They weren't employees. They were something else, something more dangerous. "Give me the phone," he said. Nia handed it over without hesitation. Their fingers brushed for a split second. And for some reason, that small contact sent a strange chill through her. Not fear, not exactly, something deeper. Min-jae took the phone, checked it briefly, then slipped it back into his coat. "Go back to work," he said calmly. Like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't just heard words like shipment and intercepted. Like her world hadn't just tilted slightly off balance. Nia blinked. "That's it?" A faint pause, then, "That's it." And just like that, he turned, walked away. his men following him in perfect sync. The doors opened, closed, and he was gone. Again. But this time, something was different, because Nia knew. This wasn't the end. This was the beginning. The rest of her shift was a blur. She moved, she worked, she smiled, but her mind was somewhere else. Every word replayed. Is the boss with you? Shipment was intercepted. Someone talked. This wasn't normal. This wasn't safe. And somehow, she had been pulled into it, without choosing, without understanding. By the time her shift ended, it was past midnight. The streets outside were quieter now, the city slower. But Nia's thoughts, still racing. She stepped outside, took a deep breath, and tried to calm herself. It's nothing, she whispered, just a misunderstanding. But deep down, she knew that wasn't true, because people like him didn't have misunderstandings. They had consequences. And the next morning, everything looked normal, too normal. The restaurant buzzed as usual, staff moving, orders flying, managers yelling, like nothing had happened. For a moment, Nia almost believed it. Maybe it was just a strange night. Maybe she overthought everything. Maybe, Nia, office, now. Her manager's voice cut through her thoughts, sharp, cold, familiar. She walked in, closed the door. What happened last night? He asked immediately. Nia frowned. What do you mean? Don't play dumb with me. His tone changed, more aggressive now. There was an incident, VIP guest involved. I handled it professionally, she said calmly. The manager laughed, short, dry. Professional? He tossed a file onto the table. You embarrassed the restaurant. Nia's chest tightened. And that's not true. Customer complaint says otherwise. Which customer? Doesn't matter. It does matter. His expression hardened. You're fired. Silence, just like that. No warning, no discussion, no fairness. The words hit her like a punch. What? You heard me. Her hands clenched. I didn't do anything wrong. Life isn't fair, Nia. There it was. That same line. The one she had heard too many times. The one people used. When they didn't want to admit they were wrong. For a second, she wanted to argue, to fight, to defend herself. But then, something inside her quieted, because she realized it wouldn't matter. It never did. So instead, she nodded slowly. Okay, and turned to leave. Dignity intact. Even now, the sunlight felt different that day. Harsher, colder. Nia stepped out of the restaurant, jobless, exhausted, angry, but still standing, always standing. She took a few steps forward, then stopped, because the street was no longer normal. Black cars lined the road, not one, not two, 5, all identical, all polished, all silent. Her heart skipped, doors opened, men stepped out, same type as before. Suits, calm expressions, controlled movements, and then the middle car door opened, and he stepped out. Kang Min-jae. Her breath caught. Not again. Not here. He walked toward her, slowly, confidently, like the street belonged to him, like everything belonged to him. People nearby started noticing. Whispers spread. Tension built. But Nia couldn't move, because this time, she understood. This wasn't coincidence. This was intentional. He stopped in front of her. You lost your job. Her voice came out quieter than expected. Hey, how do you know? He tilted his head slightly. I know everything that concerns me. A pause. And right now, you concern me. That sentence hit differently. Nia frowned. I don't need your help. I didn't offer it yet. Silence. Then, he glanced at the restaurant behind her, and his expression changed. Not visibly, but something shifted. Cold, decisive. No, he said quietly. They made a mistake. Nia's stomach dropped. What are you? He raised his hand slightly, and instantly, 2 of his men moved. Fast, efficient. They entered the restaurant. Nia's eyes widened. Stop! What are they doing? Min-jae didn't answer, because he didn't need to. Seconds later, her manager was dragged outside, pale, panicking, completely different from the man inside the office. "Sir, I didn't know. I swear." Nia's heart started pounding. "And this is too much," she said. But Min-jae's gaze remained fixed, calm, controlled, dangerous. Her manager dropped to his knees, right there, on the street, in front of everyone. "I'm sorry, I made a mistake." Nia stepped forward instinctively. "Stop this." And suddenly, everything froze, because no one spoke to Kang Min-jae like that, except her. The air went still. Even his men paused. Min-jae slowly turned his head toward her, his eyes locking onto hers. Not angry, not surprised, but interested. "Say that again," he said quietly. Nia swallowed, but she didn't step back. "This isn't right." A long silence followed, the kind that feels like a decision is being made. And in that moment, no one knew if she had just saved that man's life or put herself in danger. Min-jae took one step closer. Anan said, "You don't understand the world you just stepped into." Nia held her ground. "Then maybe you should explain it." And for the first time, a faint smile appeared on his face. Not cold, not dangerous, but intrigued, because no one had spoken to him like that in years. "You don't understand the world you just stepped into." Kang Min-jae's voice was calm, too calm, the kind of calm that didn't come from peace, but from control. Nia didn't look away. "Then maybe you should explain it." The street went silent again. Cars passing by slowed down. Pedestrians stopped pretending not to stare. Even the men around him, men who clearly feared him, held their breath, because this wasn't normal. People didn't talk back to him. People didn't question him. People obeyed. But Nia, she stood there, jobless, alone, and still, unshaken. Min-jae studied her face, looking for hesitation, fear, regret, but he didn't find any. Instead, he found something unexpected, resolve, and that intrigued him. Slowly, he turned his gaze away from her, toward the man on the ground, her manager, shaking, sweating, completely broken. "Stand up," Min-jae said. The man scrambled to his feet, barely able to keep his balance. Min-jae stepped closer, not aggressively, not loudly, but every inch of distance he closed, felt heavy. "You fired her." I didn't know." "You didn't know what?" Min-jae asked softly. "That she matters?" Silence. The manager couldn't answer, because there was no right answer. Min-jae glanced briefly at Nia, then back at the man. "Apologize." The manager nodded frantically. "I'm sorry. I'm really sorry, Nia. Please. To her properly." The man turned fully toward Nia, eyes desperate, voice shaking. "I'm sorry, Nia. I shouldn't have fired you. It was my mistake. Please forgive me." The entire street watched, and for the first time in her life, Nia Carter stood in a position of power. Not fake power, not temporary control, real, undeniable power. But instead of enjoying it, she felt something else, conflict, because this wasn't how she wanted respect. She took a breath, then looked at Min-jae. "Let him go." Another silence, longer this time, more dangerous, because now she wasn't just interrupting him, she was challenging him. "Let him go," she repeated. Min-jae's eyes didn't leave hers. "Why?" The question was simple, but loaded. "Because this isn't justice," Nia said. "This is fear." A few of the men shifted slightly, uncomfortable, because no one spoke about his actions like that. Not openly, not directly, but Nia did. Min-jae tilted his head slightly. "And what would you call what he did to you?" Nia didn't hesitate. "Wrong." "Then why protect him?" "Because I'm not like him." That answer hung in the air, heavy, unavoidable. And for a moment, something changed in Min-jae's expression. Not weakness, not softness, but respect. He looked back at the manager, then gave a small gesture with his hand. And instantly, his men stepped back, released him. The manager collapsed slightly in relief. "Get out of my sight," Min-jae said coldly. The man didn't wait. Didn't speak. He ran, almost tripping over himself. Gone within seconds. The street slowly started breathing again. But the tension still remained. Because now, everyone was watching Nia, the woman who just told a powerful man what to do, and lived. Min-jae turned back to her. You had a choice. So did you. A faint pause, then, walk with me, he said. Not an order. Not exactly. But not really a request either. Nia hesitated, just for a moment. Then, she nodded, because something inside her knew. This wasn't over. They walked down the street. His men stayed behind, giving distance, but not too much, never too much. For a while, and neither of them spoke. The city noise filled the gap. Cars, voices, distant sirens. But between them, there was silence. Until, "You're not afraid," he said. "I am." He glanced at her. "You don't act like it." Nia gave a small, tired smile. "Acting scared doesn't help." That answer stayed with him. "You heard things on that call," he continued. "Things most people don't walk away from." "I didn't choose to hear them." "But now you've heard them." Nia stopped walking. So did he. See, she turned to face him. "Then tell me the truth." A pause. "Who are you?" This time, he didn't avoid it, didn't deflect, didn't stay silent. Instead, he answered, "I run operations." "What kind of operations?" He looked directly into her eyes. "The kind that don't exist on paper." Nia's chest tightened. "Illegal." "Yes." "Dangerous." "Yes." Her voice lowered. "And the people you deal with." "Worse than me." That honesty caught her off guard, because she expected denial, excuses, lies, but not this. Not truth, raw and direct. "You're a criminal," she said quietly. Min-jae didn't react. "I'm a result." That answer stayed with her because somehow it made sense, and that scared her more. They reached a quiet part of the street, less crowded, less noise, more real. Min-jae leaned slightly against a parked car. "For people like you," he said, "the world is simple. Right, wrong, good, bad." Nia crossed her arms. "And for you, it's survival." Silence. Then he continued, "You think I chose this?" Nia didn't answer, because she didn't know. "I was born into it," he said, "raised in it, trained for it." His voice didn't change, but something underneath it did. "My father built everything. And when he died," a small pause, "I finished it." Nia watched him carefully, trying to understand, trying to see beyond the surface. "And now," she asked, "now I maintain it. And the call?" His expression hardened slightly. "That's a problem." "What kind of problem?" "The kind that requires correction." That word again. Correction. Not revenge. Not punishment. Correction. Like everything in his world, was a system, and anything that went wrong had to be fixed. Nia looked at him. Really looked at him. Not the suit, not the power, but the man. "You don't smile much," she said. A faint pause, then, "I don't have reasons to." She nodded slowly. "Maybe you're looking in the wrong places." That caught him off guard. Just slightly. "You think you understand me?" "No." "Then why say that?" "Because I understand pain." Silence. That word, pain, hit differently. Because it wasn't dramatic. It wasn't exaggerated. It was simple, honest, and real. Min-jae looked at her for a long moment, then, "Come with me." Nia frowned. "Where?" "Somewhere safe." "I don't need protection." "Everyone does. I've survived this long without it." "And how has that worked out for you?" That question cut deeper than expected, because the answer was obvious. Not well. Still, she shook her head. "I don't belong in your world." Min-jae nodded slightly. "You're right." A pause. "But your world," he glanced back toward the restaurant, "didn't protect you either." That truth hung heavy between them. At that moment, one of his men approached quickly, urgent. "Sir?" Min-jae turned. "What is it?" "The leak." His expression changed instantly. Focused, sharp. "Confirmed. And we know who talked." Silence. Cold. Immediate. Nia felt it. The shift. From calm to something else. Something darker. Min-jae's voice dropped. Where? Warehouse district. A pause, then, bring him. The man nodded and left. Nia's stomach tightened. What are you going to do? Min-jae looked at her. Fix the problem. No. Her voice was firm, stronger than before. That's not fixing. That's revenge. It's necessary. It's wrong. Silence. Again. But this time, it felt heavier. Because now, she knew exactly what he meant, and she didn't like it. Not at all. An hour later, they stood inside a large empty warehouse. Dim lights, cold air, concrete floors, and in the center, a man on his knees, hands tied, face bruised, terrified. Nia froze. This isn't right, she whispered. Min-jae stood beside her, silent, watching. The man looked up. Please, I didn't mean to. Silence, one of the guards snapped. Nia stepped forward. Stop this. But this time, no one stopped. Because now, they weren't in her world anymore. They were in his. Min-jae finally spoke. You betrayed us. The man shook his head desperately. I was forced. Everyone is. A pause, then Min-jae looked at Nia and asked, What would you do? The question hit her unexpectedly, hard, and because suddenly, this wasn't just his decision, it was hers too. The man cried, begged, promised, and all eyes turned to her, waiting for her answer, for her judgment, for her choice. And in that moment, Nia realized something terrifying. She wasn't just standing in his world anymore. She was becoming part of it. The warehouse felt colder than before, not because of the air, but because of what was about to happen. The man on his knees kept shaking. Please, I have a family. I didn't want to. Silence, one of the guards snapped again. But this time, Nia raised her hand. Let him speak. The room went quiet, because once again, she had interrupted a moment that wasn't meant to be interrupted. Min-jae didn't stop her, didn't correct her. He just watched. The man looked up at her, hope flickering in his eyes. They forced me, he said quickly. They said they'd kill my daughter. I had no choice. Nia's chest tightened. She believed him. Not completely, but enough. Enough to hesitate. She turned to Min-jae. You asked what I would do. He didn't respond, but his eyes stayed on her, waiting, listening. Let him go. The words came out steady, even though her heart wasn't. A ripple moved through the room, subtle, but real, because this wasn't a small decision. This wasn't just mercy. This was risk. Min-jae stepped closer, not angry, not aggressive, just focused. And what happens when he does it again? He won't. You don't know that. No, Nia admitted, but I know fear doesn't fix people. Silence, heavy, dangerous. You're asking me to trust him, Min-jae said, when I'm asking you to be better than him. That line cut deeper than anything else she had said before, because it wasn't emotional, it wasn't desperate, it was direct and true. Min-jae turned away from her, walked a few steps, thinking, not reacting, because men like him didn't act on emotion. They calculated, measured, decided. The man on his knees kept crying, whispering, begging. But Min-jae ignored him. Instead, he looked at the floor, then at his hands, then back at Nia. And for a moment, something inside him shifted. Not weakness, not doubt, but consideration. Because no one had ever asked him to choose mercy over control. No one had ever stood in front of him and challenged his way of thinking, without fear, until her. He walked back, stopped in front of the man. The entire room held its breath, because this was it, the moment. At the decision, Min-jae spoke. You betrayed me, the man sobbed. I'm sorry. I know. A pause, long enough to feel like time stopped. Then, Min-jae looked at one of his men. Untie him. Shock, immediate, complete. The guards hesitated, just for a second, because they weren't used to this. Sir? One of them asked carefully. I said untie him. This time, there was no hesitation. They moved quickly, cut the ropes. The man collapsed forward, crying harder than before. Thank you, thank you. But Minjae wasn't done. He leaned down slightly, close enough that only the man could hear clearly. If I ever hear your name again, his voice dropped, cold, final. You won't get a second chance. The man nodded frantically. I won't, I swear. Leave. The man didn't wait. He ran, faster than someone in his condition should have been able to. Got out of the warehouse, gone. Silence filled the space, but it wasn't the same silence as before. This one was different because something had changed, not in the room, not in the men, but in Minjae, and everyone felt it. One of his guards stepped forward. Sir, this sets a precedent. Minjae turned his head slightly. And? They'll think we're weak. No, Minjae said calmly. They'll think we're watching. That answer shut everything down, because it made sense. It always did when it came from him. He turned back to Nia, and for the first time, there was no distance in his gaze, no calculation, no coldness, just acknowledgement. You changed the outcome, he said. Nia shook her head slightly. No, you did. A pause. I gave you a choice, and you made it. Silence, then. Why? He asked. Otto, why what? Why risk everything for someone you don't know? Nia looked at the warehouse exit, where the man had run, then back at him. Because no one ever gave people like me a chance. That answer stayed in the air, heavy, honest, unavoidable. They stepped outside the warehouse. The sky was darker now, evening settling in, the world moving on like nothing had happened. But for them, everything had changed. Minjae stood beside her, quiet, thinking. You don't belong in my world, he said. Nia nodded. I know. But somehow, he paused. You affect it. She gave a small smile. Maybe your world needs that. He looked at her. Longer this time, like he was trying to memorize something. Not her face, but the feeling she brought. Something unfamiliar, something rare. Come work for me, he said. Direct, simple. Nia exhaled slowly. I can't. Why? Because I won't survive it. You would. No, she said softly. I'd become it. That answer hit harder than expected, because deep down, he knew it was true, and that bothered him more than anything else. You think I can't change? He asked. Nia looked at him, carefully. You already did. A pause. In there, she nodded toward the warehouse. You chose mercy. That was your influence. No, she corrected. That was your choice. Silence. Then, you're not what I expected, he said. She smiled slightly. Neither are you. Days passed, but things didn't go back to normal, because normal didn't exist anymore. Nia found a new job, smaller place, less money, but more respect. And somehow, that mattered more. Her life was still hard. Bills still came. Problems still existed. But something inside her felt different, so stronger, calmer, because now she knew her worth, and she knew she didn't need anyone's power to prove it. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, Minjae sat in a quiet room, looking at reports, numbers, operations, the same world, the same system. But something had changed, because now, when decisions came, he paused. Not long, not noticeably, but enough. Enough to think, enough to consider, enough to remember. There was another way. One evening, Nia walked home, tired but peaceful, and as she reached the corner, she saw a familiar black car, parked, waiting. Her steps slowed, the window rolled down, and there he was, Kang Min-jae. He didn't step out, didn't call her over, just looked at her, the same way he had the first time, but different, less distant, more human. You're doing well, he said. Nia smiled. And I'm surviving. That's more than most. A pause, then she stepped closer. Not afraid, not unsure, just steady. You didn't come here just to say that. No, he admitted. Silence, then, thank you. The words were simple, but they carried weight, because men like him didn't say things like that. Nia nodded. You're welcome. Another pause. Then she asked, are you going to change? He leaned back slightly, thinking. Not completely. She smiled. I didn't expect you to. But, he looked at her again. I'll remember. That's enough. Silence settled between them. Not awkward, not tense. Just real. After a moment, the car engine started, and slowly, it pulled away, disappearing into the night. Nia stood there for a second, watching. Then, she turned and walked home, not looking back, because she didn't need to. She had her life, her dignity, her strength, and somewhere in the shadows, a powerful man carried a small piece of her influence, a reminder that even in a world built on fear, one person can change the outcome. She picked up the wrong phone that night, but in doing so, she changed the right fate.